A 150-meter American longline vessel leaves port before dawn, bound for deep reef slopes where giant sea eels hide in the rocks.
These industrial fishermen target moray eels so large they can match a man in length and overpower careless crew at the rail.
The coastline falls away behind them as they steam towards submerged ledges and drop-offs haunted by giant sea eels.
On deck, the empty steel platform becomes a factory line built around heavy bottom-set longline gear.
Massive drums hold kilometers of mainline that will be laid along reef edges where moray eels hunt at night.
The captain briefs the crew on how a hooked eel will twist, knot itself, and try to saw through gear against the rock.
Every leader, weight, and circle hook must endure slow grinding pressure and violent twisting from an eel locked in a crevice.
Frozen bait comes up from the hold, each chunk a potential trigger for a moray to leave its hole and strike.
One by one, circle hooks are baited and clipped to leaders that will lie just above the reef at night. As evening approaches, the first weighted sections of longline slip off the stern and sink toward the broken seabed below.
Below the surface, the main line descends through dim blue water towards steep rock faces and sandy patches. The bait settles along a reef edge, each hook hovering just off the bottom where eels patrol.
In the growing dark, a massive head emerges from a hole, jaws opening and closing in the current.
Giant moray eels are ambush hunters, spending most of their lives wedged in the rock, waiting for prey to pass close.
This eel slides further from its hole, body unfurling like a long rope across the reef toward the hook.
Far above, the sea remains flat and quiet, hiding the slow, deliberate movements along the reef below.
The baited hooks hang just high enough to avoid snagging rock, yet low enough for curious eels to find them.
On deck, the crew watches the dark water, knowing their gear now threads through unseen caves and ledges below.
Another giant eel glides along the rock wall, its body disappearing into shadow as it investigates the new scent.
It tests the current, drifting just down current of the bait, so every movement carries more scent to its jaws.
The bait trembles slightly in the flow, a small motion that triggers an instinct honed over millions of years.
At the surface, only a few subtle shifts in buoy angles betray that anything is touching the gear below.
The eel inches closer, jaws parting wider as it aligns its long head directly with the hanging bait. It twists its body sideways, lining up so the hook and bait will vanish in a single sideways snatch.
The ocean looks almost empty from above, but the line now lies across the front doors of several eel territories.
Moray eels rarely rush. They creep forward until the bait is close, then strike with shocking speed and suction. The eel flares its mouth wide, turning water, bait, and hook into a single moving mass flowing inside. In less than a heartbeat, the bait vanishes, and the circle hook begins its deadly arc toward the hinge of the jaw. Instantly, the eel reverses, trying to retreat back into the safety of its hole with the hook already in place.
The hook lodges, and hundreds of centimeters of angry muscle slam against the unyielding line. The eel wraps itself around the leader, knotting its body in a desperate attempt to twist free.
It pushes its head into a crack, using the rock as a fulcrum to saw the line across the stone.
The seabed erupts in a storm of sand and broken shell as the eel thrashes inside its collapsing hideout.
Slowly, the longline begins to win, dragging the eel out into open water away from the shelter of the reef.
What was once a shadow in a hole is now locked to a steel spine, leading straight back to the ship.
The eel leans its weight into the line, making tight, twisting circles close to the seafloor.
On the surface, a nearby buoy jerks sharply and then drags low, signaling heavy, persistent weight below.
The captain calls all hands as the longline hauler spins up, ready to fight whatever is knotted to the bottom.
The line lifts from the sand, dragging the eel out into open water as it writhes and ties itself into new knots.
At the surface, the buoys creep forward in a slow arc as the fish is pulled away from the reef edge.
The hauler groans as steel and synthetic lines stretch under the constant twisting pull of the eel below.
The eel responds by wrapping its whole body around the leader, turning itself into a living knot of resistance.
Heave! Watch the cable coming up.
All right, steady now.
The men brace against the rail, using their own weight and balance to keep the line from whipping out of control.
Pulled higher into the water column, the eel hangs like a dark ribbon, still twisting against the pull.
Near the surface, it rolls and writhes, sending heavy vibrations and pulses up through the line into the ship.
The crew works quickly now. A live eel near the rail can wrap around legs, rails, and anything else it reaches.
Just beneath the ship, the eel circles tightly, its long body looping under the hull in an effort to snag the gear.
Foam boils alongside the vessel as the eel makes one last set of heavy, twisting lunges against the line.
The hauler chatters harder as the branch line approaches, bringing the unseen note of muscle closer with every turn.
Oxygen debt builds as the eel's powerful body begins to tire in the warmer upper layers.
At the surface, it finally shows itself in broken flashes of mottled skin and looping body just below the light.
The crew reaches down with gaffs and ropes, careful not to let the eel wrap around arms or legs.
From below, the eel hangs nearly vertical, its body spiraling around the tight branch line as it rises.
Beside the hull, bubbles and swirling water mark where the eel swings under the ship's beam. The eel is hauled backward out of the water column, its coils straightening as the crane lifts.
It breaks the surface in a tangle of rope, steel, and slick skin under the harsh glare of deck lights.
Dozens of kilos of struggling eel now hang just clear of the rail, swinging dangerously close to the men below.
Far below, the rest of the longline still fishes along the reef, its hooks waiting beside other holes and cracks.
On the surface, the vessel holds steady as the crew works the heavy eel down onto the steel ramp.
The eel thumps onto the ramp, its long body folding and unfolding across the wet steel.
Further down the line, another moray leaves its hole to investigate a free meal, unaware of the steel attached.
Buoys dip again, telling the crew that this stretch of reef holds more than one giant sea eel tonight.
Soon the steel deck holds several eels, each one a sinuous, muscle-bound predator dragged up from the reef.
Every hooked eel adds more drag and more twisting force, bowing the long line into curves along the reef edge. The pattern of moving buoys tells the captain exactly how the line lies across the hidden landscape below.
Hauling giant eels is slow, heavy work that tests both machinery and men through the entire night.
Some eels tear free or find sharp rock. Others are brought steadily upward until their coils finally slacken.
At the rail, each new burst of bubbles and swirling water could be another enormous eel about to break the surface. One by one, the eels come aboard and are laid out in rows, their bodies folding back on themselves.
Down below, gaps appear in the once continuous chain of bait as more hooks come back empty or twisted.
The sea surface, scratched by lines and wakes, slowly calms as the last sections of gear rise from the depths. Fatigue sets in, but no one relaxes until the final hook is aboard and the last eel is secured.
At last, the final meters of mainline lift from the bottom, leaving only disturbed sand and rock behind.
The sun clears the horizon, revealing faint trails and slicks where the night's work took place.
On deck, the steel floor now looks like a heap of living ropes, each eel a heavy predator from the reef below.
Below, untouched morays still patrol deeper cracks and caves, never once touching a hook.
From the surface, there is no sign of the giants left behind, only endless water stretching to the horizon.
The final hook comes aboard, and the captain finally calls the haul complete.
With the gear clear, the reef begins to settle, sediment drifting back into place over the fresh tracks.
The longliner steams slowly ahead, leaving behind nothing but wakes and fading swirls of foam.
Now the fight shifts from live eels to careful handling of heavy, valuable meat bound for distant buyers.
Scavengers move in quickly, picking at leftover bait and scraps scattered across the bottom.
High-pressure hoses sweep the steel clean, erasing stains and stray scales before the next set of gear.
Somewhere deeper, a truly enormous moray glides along the slope, never having come within reach of the hooks.
Its presence is invisible from above, hidden by water that looks almost empty to the human eye.
On deck, the landed eels become data points as lengths, weights, and locations are logged.
The morays that remain will pass through the same cracks and crevices tonight as they did long before the ship arrived.
Wind builds small whitecaps, gradually wiping away the last surface traces of the night's longline operation.
Below deck, the chilled hold fills with carefully stacked eels resting on beds of crushed ice.
For the eels left behind, the longliner is just another brief disturbance in a habitat shaped over centuries.
To a casual observer ashore, this entire world of steel, depth, and hidden eels is completely invisible. The captain studies the catch report, adjusting future sets to match what the reef told them tonight.
Far beneath the keel, eel migrations continue regardless of where the lines are set.
The ship turns toward port, carrying a hold full of fish and a story very few will ever see firsthand. On deck, the remaining eels are straightened out for final measuring and documentation.
Behind them, the reef floor looks unchanged from above, its scars hidden under fresh, drifting sediment.
To the horizon, the ocean seems flat and simple, hiding its complexity a few meters below the surface.
For the crew, the night's grueling work will become just another line in a logbook and a few payslips.
Below the hull, water closes back over the eel grounds, ready to reset before the next set of hooks arrives. Before the catch vanishes into the hold, each eel is measured, tagged, and recorded in careful detail.
The girth at the thickest point is exactly 48 centimeters. The specimen seems healthy.
A deck scale turns the eel's presence into numbers, coldly recording the mass lifted from the reef. Each eel is tagged, so its journey from this steel deck to a distant plate can be traced.
Photos record scars, shape, and condition, building an archive of what lives along these reefs. The crew gathers around one particularly huge eel, quietly acknowledging its size and age.
They take a quick photo before the eel disappears below deck, proof of the night's heaviest catch.
Then the hatch opens, and the eel slides into the cold dark of the refrigerated hold. With the hold sealed, the working deck is suddenly just steel, ropes, and tired men again. The crew finally relaxes, swapping stories as the ship turns toward its next destination. For a few minutes, exhaustion wins over adrenaline, and the steel deck falls quiet.
Far away on land, a restaurant kitchen prepares for a delivery of premium eel caught on nights like this.
Here, the work is bright, clean, and controlled, a different world from the wet steel deck at sea. Diners sit under warm lights, reading menus that compress this entire chain of effort into a single line of text. Most will never picture the longliner, the gear, or the men whose work made their plates possible.
Out at sea, the 150-meter vessel steams on, deck reset and ready for another encounter with the reef giants.
As the sun sinks, the ship becomes a dark shape on the horizon, moving through the vast home of the giant sea eel.